All right. I have the feeling I have recorded this video before or recorded something very similar to it. But regardless, I am going to do another one. What is Americanism? I happen to be looking at at some info on Anton LaVey. And it's interesting how conservative he was in certain ways. I mean, obviously, he was influenced by Ayn Rand. He was friends with one of the founders of a fascist party in the U.S., which kind of goes to the link of fascism or at least in the U.S. I can't speak for the rest of the world, but obviously fascism and Satanism, which is very cringe, to say the least. And, of course, a lot of the TRS folks will be very quick to distance themselves from like the Order of the Nine, whatever it is. Anyway, they're cringe. And I saw the recent shift of somebody I'm not going to mention anymore, specifically by name, who now has become more of an atheist and an anti-theist. And it's interesting to me how this shift came about, or what it was. And I think that, Anton LaVey mentions it again. Let me go ahead and read, actually, what Anton LaVey said, word for word what he said. Let me read it out here. So let's see here. In his letters to... here we go. Politics, Letters to the Devil. Here we go. To sum up our political doctrine, Satanism is Americanism in its purest form, with only the outdated moral codes altered to fit the times, and with recognition of the fact that only if man's most basic instincts are satisfied can a nation receive his best. When it becomes common knowledge that we do not advocate or even approve of denial or desecration of such sacred American traditions as home, family, patriotism, personal pride, etc., but instead champion these things, our one-time components in the establishment will not have a leg to stand on. Interesting way of looking at it, kind of a Sun Tzu sort of way of seeing things. If we become the traditionalists, then the establishment will have to attack us for something else, sort of thing. I don't know, at least in my opinion. But actually, in view of the vast numbers of religious leaders defending and expounding the extreme liberal philosophy of the hippie or drug culture, conservative organizations will, and already do, find Satanism far more compatible with their doctrines than they now think it to be. I feel rather sorry for, but I must admit, amused by, the poor old dyed-in-the-wool conservative who considers the flag and God to be inseparable institutions because the new Christianity is composed of the drug-befuddled wretches they find totally reprehensible. It looks as though one is going to be forced to choose between God and the flag. This is something a lot of Christians, I think, are already doing to a point. And, whether it's Catholic, whether it's Baptist, whatever the case may be, the idea that you have to be able to separate your religion from the country. This is something that, true believers of religion, they do not care about countries. They do not care about these carnal things, these ideas of, a nation and, and all these temporary things, right? And I think that's very important to realize. But let's go ahead or else become part of a dying society. I realize most would think me far too optimistic, but I can simply see the change coming. I think back just 5 short years ago when I formally founded the church. How many theologians were admitting to the irrationality and inconsistencies of their religions? Practically none. And used the stern, unyielding Christian churches have admitted their errors, they might as well admit to defeat. It is in young people such as yourselves, proud walkers of the left-hand path, whom I place my faith for the future of this, our fair land. America shall, indeed, have a bright future once she has weathered the storm of those two opposing factions who respectively hate and love her, but would see her torn asunder in order to prove their respective points. Love for one's countries must be shown in the same way as love for another person. We must be able to see her faults and work towards changing them, without robbing her of all pride and dignity in the process. On the other hand, we must not blindly accept her faults and constantly make excuses for her, for that is not love, it is infatuation. And of course, it says that LaVey was a friend of James Madule, leader of the fascist National Renaissance Party. Due to Madule's opposition to Christianity, he sought new religious ideas and was attracted to an infusion of fascism and Satanism. So there are some things to say. Some of that is propaganda, and saying basically we're going to win, which I think is tiring. You. Editing. Okay. Well, let me try to finish up my point with this, where, this sort of narrative of we're going to win, I think means nothing. Maybe this is getting somewhat existential, maybe it's cope, maybe it's whatever. But victory to me represents the organization and not you. Now, I know this is somewhat individualistic, but I think it's important to point out. I saw good old Justin King. I'll go ahead and mention him. It's been a while, so I'll give it some time on that. But I think that good old Justin King was saying, we will win this and that, saying, we're gonna get rural people to be supportive of LGBTQ rights because of individuality and not getting in other people's business. And I was like, that is a hell of a stretch. I understand what he was trying to say, but I think that it was a hell of a stretch to say, oh, well, all the stuff that's going on is basically repression of individuality. And like I say, but back to what I said about victory and about winning. Winning means a win for the organization, which may help you or it may not. And I think this is something that's very important to realize. I think that there's this idea where it's just like, well, yeah, we're going to win. It's like, when you say crap like that, it's like, I don't expect winning. I expect to just try to live my life and to try to work in society the best that I can, and try to be part of the collective. But I think maybe this is somewhat cope, but I get so tired of the we're going to win business. When I hear this type of stuff, it's like, on a long enough timeline, we're going to win. That's like saying, on a long enough timeline, I'm going to die. It's like, yeah, no shit. It's like, okay, you're going to win, but what is the price of that victory? That's really the more essence of it as well. It's also, the idea of, are you included in that victory? Do you get to feel the spoils of that victory? Or are you going to get kicked to the curb? It's the same thing with the idea of, what does victory mean? What did victory mean for the United States? Yeah, we won the Civil War. Woohoo, the Union won. Woo, we reunited the country against those evil, separatists, those evil racist Confederates. What happened because of that? Well, yeah, slavery did end, but you had a continued separation, a continued purposeful separation between North and South. Much the same way as, the victory of, Germany reuniting, right? West Germany was still a fairly populous and fairly advanced technologically country, whereas East Germany, German Democratic Republic, is continued to be left in the dark. Continue to be left in the dark. And I think it's important to realize the effects of that, you know. And I think that there are smarter people, to a point, people like you, Gopnik, who have mentioned this. Like, yeah, this is is that we have seen, these countries kind of give up on things, and this is what has occurred with, with these separations and how to rebuild a country. Me personally, I think that this is just natural. This is, you abandon those ideas, or you have more of these sort of, reformist ideas, and then you create more, extremism from the right, supposedly. I mean, I guess you could take it as that to a point, but right wing and left wing in general, I don't know. We still live by them because it's easier, because we're lazy. But I think that there's, a lot that's left on the floor, But I think that's all I have to. Well, I think that there's a little bit more. I take that back. I guess I would say that that this idea of Americanism is truly the face of capitalism. When I see the results of, it's so amazing to me in a lot of ways that these, I'm just going to say screw it, the neoconservatives and everything else like that have become so much atheistic and everything else. And they'll say, well, only America can solve these things and whatnot. And of course, you of course ignore the fact of, it's like, well, we're against racism and all that. And it's a cheap ploy, because of course, you could bring up the huge amount of racism that has occurred in every American war. The Second World War with the buck-tooth Tojo, right? Not really, you couldn't really do that, anything specifically German in some cases, but they did that too. There was a fair amount of anti-German stuff that occurred in the First World War and the Second World War. Korea, I'm sure there were plenty of, use of the word chink, this and that, and I don't like using that. That's a very bad term. But anywho, that was, of course, used in the Vietnam War. Immense amount of racism. And it's liberal racism, isn't it? This is the whole idea of, liberal racism, where it's just like, yeah, we don't like Muslims, this and that. We don't like Muslims, and we just hate China and all that because of, because Trump said so and all this. It's just, and it goes to show that they are racist liberals, I think is the word. Yeah, racist liberal, where it's just like, yeah, we don't like these things, but we still, we hold up LGBTQ rights as a thing, bro. And it's just, this is, Americanism also includes, of course, this defense of homosexuality regardless. And it's why the U.S. is an artificial country. And now, at this point, I'm just rambling. So I'm just, I've been rambling since the beginning, obviously, but Americanism, I think, represents racist liberalism mixed with I'm trying to think of the word, a zealous defense of LGBTQ rights, at least in name. I'm not even going to sit there and get into that, but yeah, just cringe everything, where you'll see the Smithsonian Channel on TV, having the rainbow flag. It's ridiculous. And it is the true face of capitalism. It's that true every man for themselves, every, every queer person for themselves, whatever the case may be, but will give you lip service to say that you're good, sort of thing, you know? And that's really what Americanism is, isn't it? Americanism is everything that's wrong with the world, arguably. That's why, even though people will say, oh, it's a conspiracy theory that they, them, quote unquote, and you know who I'm talking about, want to destroy the U.S. and break it apart. Even Netanyahu said that, we're going to cut up America slowly. This country's already destroying itself. It already is. And there is nothing, in my opinion, that can save it. I would say it was already dead. The idea of, individualism or whatever the case may be, I think it died long ago. I remember seeing a comment into one of those Russian doomer music channels, and I translated it, and it said something like, people die at 30, but then they actually, are laid to rest in their 70s, and they're just kind of zombified. A certain way I feel that way myself, is that I kind of, my energy and my passion died inside of me a long time ago, but I'm just still going. I don't know. Anywho, now I'm getting real sleepy. I don't know what hit me, but just hit me like a ton of bricks. So now I'm feeling sleepy. But anywho, this is a long rant, but basically is Americanism just needs to die. And I've always tried to separate between the idea of you're an American in the sense of you are a product of the American system. You've been raised in schools. You've been taught American English. You've listened to, I don't know, Chicago drill music or whichever, like, right? You've listened to Chief Keef or I don't know who's a bigger name now. People like you've listened to WAP, right? Or Fetty Wap. I know WAP is a song by itself, but yeah, Fetty Wap and people like that, right? I was trying to sound like not a boomer, but yeah. Slim Jesus. There you go, Slim Jesus. You enjoyed Slim Jesus's music, I guess. After his several interviews with Vlad, DJ Vlad of Vlad TV. But anywho, that's what Americanism is. I think you can be a product of the American system and still be against America as a concept. Now, of course, the thing is that people hate America for different reasons of colonialism and everything else. Yeah, you can dislike it for that too. But I think that we're all still products of the American system, and there's a deeper level to Americanism that I think that a lot of folks just don't want to touch. But yeah, hopefully I'll enjoy that. See you later, and goodbye.